Hello, I'm Melanie Jackson, Melanie the midwife, and I'm here today to have a chat with Amy, my friend Amy. We're going to chat through a few things, but we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Melanie Jackson, private midwife here in Sydney, Australia, and I've been doing that for 10 years. Also the creator of Transformative Birthwork online course, and a midwifery researcher. So I currently work for Western Sydney University as a researcher, as well as being a midwife and a mama. And I've done a PhD in birthing outside the system, and that's all about why women choose birth choices that are outside mainstream birth options. And I'm here talking to Amy, who's going to introduce herself now.
Well, Mel was my home birth midwife. So we were blessed to have Mel's care throughout our pregnancy and immediate postpartum. And yeah, she's become a really good friend. And I asked her, because of how transformed I was by birth, I wanted to go into birth work. And so I've been blessed to have Mel as a guide and a mentor on that journey as well. So I am a transpersonal mentor and facilitator. Transpersonal means to go beyond the ego and into what lies beneath. It's a very short, trying to keep it concise, version of what transpersonal is. But basically we value through therapy the spiritual as important as the mental, emotional, and physical aspects of our being. So after the birth of my son, I wanted to incorporate birth mentoring into that because it was just the most profoundly transformative experience of my life to date. And so now I'm working with pregnant and birthing people as well, both through their pregnancy and in the birth space and into postpartum. And also the rebirthing of people in general on their own journeys, you know, whether pregnant or not, we're always rebirthing ourselves. Yeah,
amazing.
That's me. But I really wanted to talk. You're always such a wealth of information, and I really feel like this time on Earth is such a profoundly swirly and crazy time. But also, there's another element for me which I'm feeling into, which is a radical shift in a lot of people's consciousness that's going on now, and of course that extends to the birth realm. And so I think it's really important that we shine light on some of the shifts that are happening and some of the questions that are being raised at this time on Earth, and how we can support people through like navigating all of that.
For sure. And people are going to get a little bit of insight today because Amy and I meet up at least once a month to just talk birth. And so this is a little bit of what we normally do, except today we get to do it remotely because we are kind of focusing on the issue of the day, COVID-19, where we're all being forced into social isolation, which is really wild because birth is a community effort and parenting's community effort. And it's, you know, the strategies that are being used to prevent the spread of coronavirus are really impacting upon what women would normally be drawn to during their pregnancy, birth, and parenting journey. So it's massive.
It's huge. And for anyone that doesn't know, Mel and I both homeschool our kids. So we're feeling it on, you know, that level as well of being just not able to go outside as we normally would and not being able to meet up. And so we're all feeling it obviously to different degrees. But I'm really feeling the collective fear around birth and the unanswered questions that are floating around the ether at the moment. And some of the stories that I'm receiving in my inbox from birthing people who are being told information that may not actually align with what the protocol is now, in terms of whether they're allowed support people. You know, we're seeing more birthing people wanting to birth outside the system. I feel like there's never been a time in my life where home birth has been more widely discussed. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think there's a big.
Am I frozen? Oh, there you
Am I unfrozen?
go.
Right. Yeah, cool. I think too, you would be getting a lot of personal stories from women because of your big following on Instagram. I imagine that women are really reaching out to you as, you know, as a supporter and someone who they can lean on. So for me, I've been just getting birth inquiries, really, a few extra birth inquiries from women considering moving into home birth. Um, I'm a little bit, this could be a controversial sort of statement, but there's a, if you bring it, I feel a little bit like there's this roller coaster of hype that started around the conversation that's happening for birthing women in coronavirus. And I feel like women are being sent on this roller coaster of hype and fear and sensational, like it's all being very sensationalized. I think there's a lot of motivation for people to start pushing their agenda in this time where there's going to be massive policy change and where things need to change really quickly. And so organizations are seeing that, okay, you know, the world is making these huge sweeping changes. Maybe if we get our requests in, they'll suddenly make our changes too. But I'm not sure if they're being well thought out or strategically planned or anything. Anyway, I'm having a ramble. But I think certainly what is happening is people are starting to question whether a hospital is a safe place anymore. So what we've been told in the world, in society, by, you know, the current discourse around birth is that birth is supposed to be a dangerous thing. And we've, you know, women of the world have been told, go to hospital. The hospital is a safe place. That's where you'll be safe to give birth. And now what women are feeling is the hospital is supposed to be a safe place, but maybe it's not safe anymore because there's this risk of being exposed to coronavirus. And so I think what's happening is there's less of a thought about a big move to home birth, but more of a paradigm shift around how women are feeling about the hospital. And as if the hospital can actually serve their needs. Because all of a sudden, the place that they have been relying on as being the safe place, or that they've been told for probably their whole lives is a safe place to go to, is no longer considered a safe place.
Yeah.
However, I think we need a little bit of perspective on the numbers. Around the world, it's been a big impact of coronavirus. Here in Australia, where we are, there has been just under 6,000 confirmed cases of coronavirus across the whole of Australia. And to date, 45 people have died. And the median age of the people who have died in Australia from coronavirus is 80 years old. And the youngest person to die in Australia has been 55. So what we know about coronavirus at the moment is that it's affecting really older people with pre-existing conditions are at the most risk of having severe symptoms. So that's really great news for birthing women. I think the fear around coronavirus and hospitals is potentially been blown out. We're all doing a lot of preventative strategies to avoid getting into a hospital, which is what that's where we're at the moment. A whole stack of preventative strategies in Australia. We're not necessarily in a pandemic state of illness like a lot of other countries are experiencing in this time. But we've still got restrictions. I think I completely forgot what your question was.
No, it's good. Like what I'm hearing from a lot of people as well is not only like the fear of the illness itself, but actually how quickly our rights and liberties are taken away. And actually, you know, I'm not, whether that's right or wrong, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how quickly they're removed. And actually when in the hospital, you know, it speaks to the broader issue that we're not necessarily perceived as the decision maker. And so when we're birthing, women are planning to birth in hospital and now, okay, well, your whole plan is gone. Just how quickly that happened.
Yeah.
And how actually confronting that is.
Yes, to suddenly, do you know what though? I think it's made obvious the level of control that is already thought to exist over women in hospitals has just come way obvious. So
That's what I'm saying, totally.
yeah, so I think there was a level where hospitals and institutions expect that they're able to control a woman's behavior in hospital, and they've already put restrictions on things in hospitals that women have come to accept. So for example, many few hospitals will allow you to bring your children with you for a birth, or more than 3 support people, or there are restrictions on what women can do, but women have come to accept that as the rules of going into a hospital. What's happened now is the rules have changed so suddenly that women have not been expecting that for their whole pregnancy. And so their plans have been shifted. And the other issue is that these rules are ingrained in law now. The police can enforce them. It's not like when we went into hospital to give birth, 3 months ago. If you didn't want something or you didn't like the hospital's decision, you had autonomy and you could say, well, I'm doing it anyway. This is kind of a legal thing. So if you go in with your partner and another person and want them there, you can legally be restricted from doing that. Having said that, I had a positive story today where a client of mine who I was just with, her sister's just given birth last week and was allowed to have 2 support people with her in a Sydney hospital. So, I think there's such a variety of things that are happening. But yeah, I think women are in 2 boats. There's women who were just planning to go to hospital with their partner and have their baby, and were always planning that. And I think those women are not necessarily in a worse off place. They may need to consider things like, if their partner's being asked to leave early, consider like early discharge and having care at home rather than in the hospital so you can all be together. But yeah, massive, big, sweeping changes that have just taken women by surprise. And all of a sudden ingrained in law, which is different to what women were confronted with in hospitals before.
And that is really, for me, on a personal level, I'm confronted by how quickly the laws can be changed and how quickly our rights can be nullified. And I don't blame birthing people for thinking of other options. I think I would probably be doing the same if I had hospital plans and suddenly, if I wanted my mother there and a doula and my partner, rightly so, to have those people reduced to 1. And what that actually brings up for me is women whose partners are unable to provide them with sufficient, intimate, productive support. In a perfect world, every partner would be the main support person. It's their rite of passage just as much as it is the birthing person's. The sad fact is many partners are not actually equipped, and that's why women and birthing people are employing doulas so that they can support the partner. And I think this speaks to something you've brought up before, which is having Zoom doula presence, so that the partner can be in the space, because there is that danger of, all right, if a partner's already feeling a bit disconnected from the process and then we remove them from the birthing space, I mean, that's really just amplifying that disconnection. It could be. So how do we protect that, but also really prioritize the needs of the person who's birthing?
I think you're right. Often the reason why women hire a doula to be with them is because they've realized there's a gap in what their partner or the rest of their support network could offer them. And so they're filling the gap by hiring somebody whose job it is to be good at being at birth and at being with laboring women. So then all of a sudden that strategy has been pulled out from under women. But what we can still do now, so basically we're in a time where we need to adapt to what's happening. It's such massive sweeping change. And if we think about it, society's never been interested in serving the needs of women in birth. So actually to suddenly, right? So to suddenly expect that right now in a crisis where their attention is even further drawn away from the needs of women, to suddenly expect that they're going to make sweeping changes that will favor birthing women, I think is unrealistic.
Yeah.
So there's a massive move now to make some big sweeping changes that are going to work out really well for private midwives, for birthing women wanting more options, for the cost of home birth and all that stuff. I don't think that what we've seen is in the most ideal, calm circumstances, it's been so difficult to create positive change for birthing women. So I don't think it's all of a sudden going to happen now. So what might need to happen is a complete shift in how people are going to conduct themselves. So where before women could say, right, my partner's not in a place to provide me with the support that I feel like I need, I'm going to hire a doula. The new solution, the new adaptive solution might need to be, okay, it's time for us now to both step up and be the doula that we need for ourselves. And their doula, if they've hired one, can give them skills to advocate for themselves, can give them a stack of education that they already have from their experience to help the parents prepare themselves. So I think the best thing that parents can do is just kind of have to do a complete mind shift and say, right, we're stuck in this crappy situation where it's just going to be us in the birth room. That was never the plan. What can we do to make it the best possible situation if we can't change our birth option? So for women or for families who can't make the shift away from hospital and give birth somewhere else, they're in a situation where they're going to give birth in hospital now. So do things like have your doula on call, on FaceTime, on Zoom, to be able to have conversations about what's happening. Very few things in birth happen quickly and need immediate decision making. So one strategy that I suggest, and it's something that I cover in my transformative birth work course, I call it a power strategy to maintain your time bubble and take time to make decisions. So if your care provider comes in and says, we need to do A, B, and C, and you need to make a decision about if you're going to consent to that or not, take 20 minutes to decide. Call your doula, fill them in on what's happened, ask for advice, ask your partner, call anybody else, that's in your circle that you might want advice from before making a decision. So although your support people are not in the room, you can still use them to draw on for advocacy. And so there's been a huge shift in how your care is going to be provided and what you're allowed. But let's thrive in that for now, rather than waiting on huge sweeping change that's going to be good for women, which through society and through life has never been a focus of the powers that be. They're never thinking, how can we make this world just the best, most amazing thing for women, let alone birthing women, So let's now step up, take responsibility for what we need to know to get the best out of this crappy situation that women are now finding themselves in. That would be my very quick, short fix for where women are now. How ideal it would be for a woman to be able to say, look, I'm no longer happy with what the hospital's offering. I'm just going to go and have a home birth. But there's so many obstacles to that. That takes money. It takes access. Like, you have to be living in the right place where there's no more than 200 private midwives in all of Australia. And we book up usually well ahead of time. And so to suddenly make suggestions that women, maybe they should just have home birth, maybe that would be safe. Well, the infrastructure is not there. We don't have a system that can support the movement of frightened women into home birth. There's not enough midwives. Women often don't have the resources. And so it can't be the solution for everyone to just go and have a home birth, because we don't have that in Australia like other countries do, where midwives can suddenly just start providing home birth and be comfortable with that, and where women are in a mindset that welcomes in the idea that home birth is safe and a good idea.
So I think that would lead us into the potential of free birth for some people who are adamant, I don't feel safe, I don't feel comfortable to birth in the hospital, I can't access a private midwife, I'm going to have a birth unassisted.
Free birth. Yeah. So for people who don't know what free birth is, it's a birth outside of a hospital without a trained, registered health professional that's there to provide sort of the medical care that some women need in birth. So it's essentially a birth without any trained health professional there that can provide emergency assistance. So often women will just have themselves and their partner or a good friend or a doula there as support and give birth. So in Australia, we don't really know the free birth rates. It sits somewhere in 0.4%. There's a grey area of where babies are born in the 0.4%. Some of those are born before arrival to hospital, where the woman was planning to give birth in hospital but didn't make it, and the others are unknown. So the stats on free birth sit in there somewhere in Australia. And so however, the philosophy and planning that goes into free birth is quite unique. So I would find it really interesting to talk to a woman who had chosen to give birth in hospital, and then based on the changes that happened in hospital, suddenly decided to free birth, just because there's such a huge philosophical shift that has to happen in a woman's mind to get them. So women who free birth are so confident and trusting in their bodies to be able to do what it needs to do in order to bring a baby out safely. And then on top of that, they're super prepared and educated about the process of birth, what to do if certain things happen that aren't in line with the physiological process, so they can troubleshoot, things that might go wrong. They've got plans for, for various things. So if this happens, we're going to do this. So there's actually, although, they think a lot of the opinion about women who free birth is that they just kind of float through their pregnancies and then, give birth to a baby and go back to bed is really not accurate. When I did my PhD, the amount of work that a woman does in order to have a free birth, it's quite extraordinary. It's more than any other woman would probably do. Women who are planning a home birth can really let go of a lot of things and entrust that to their midwife. So in terms of equipment and, planning for possible complications, a lot of that's left to their home birth midwife. So all they do is just kind of look after themselves and go into labor and figure that they'll do the work, and then the midwife can pick up on anything that's not quite right and potentially intervene if you need. So, but women who free birth take on that role themselves, the role that would normally be done by a midwife at home. The women take it on and prepare themselves for that. So, yeah, and so that takes a massive level of learning. So my concern is for women who take free birth too lightly and think, oh, well, that's okay, I'll just stay home and have the baby. Where actually women who have been planning free birth put a lot of effort and preparation into their free birth. And so it becomes a little bit dangerous to suddenly flippantly make a choice to free birth, because there's not the level of preparation there that is normally involved in free birth. I think it's definitely a potential that women could flip from planning a hospital birth to a free birth. I'm not convinced it's a great solution compared to the what they might be confronted with at hospital versus what they might be confronted with if they flippantly and unpreparedly plan to free birth.
Because it really is, I mean, I often say we birth how we live. And so if we are super self-responsible, willing to take risk, birth has risk, it's an inherent risk we can't avoid. Birth is not inherently safe. It's birth, there's risk.
Yeah.
So to jump from, I'm going to go to the hospital, I haven't really given birth much thought. That's where I feel like I feel safe there. And so that's sort of at one end of the scale, and then you have free birth at the other. And actually there's been quite a successful smear campaign, in my opinion, against women who choose and people who choose free birth as, like you said, I'm just, floating along and I trust birth and that's it and I'll get it done. It's totally not the case. And I'm actually working with the free birthing mama at the moment, and she has been working her ass off to undo a lifetime of conditioning out of her self-responsible mindset and back into, deep radical reclamation of her autonomy, really. So I hear what you're saying fully, that people just jumping from that, from hospital birth to potential free birth, not minimizing the work that actually goes into preparation. It's not to say that it's not a good idea. It might be the perfect birth for them, but do the work.
Yeah. Well, and because I've seen things like on Facebook and things, there's a lot going on, a lot of the forums, and women are like, what are we going to do? The hospital's only letting me have one person, and they're saying this and this is going to be different, and just sort of flippant, suggestions like, oh, why not just free birth? And I think it's not just free birth. I think babies most of the time will come out, but fear is never a good reason for a decision. So if you're fleeing the hospital out of fear and running to home birth because you're scared of one place, it's not necessarily a good decision-making process for birth. Really, women need to go where they believe that's best and safest for them. And some women feel cesarean sections are best and safest for them, and they are going to be totally happy with that choice. The majority of women feel that hospital is best and safest for a variety of reasons that have either been conditioned in them throughout their lives, or that they have a genuine medical need for hospital care. And then some women genuinely believe home birth or free birth is best and safest for them. And that's how we should be making decisions. Rather than running from the hospital because you're scared, think to yourself, what is best and safest for me and my baby right now? Where am I going to feel safest? That's where you've got to go. And so the deep chance is that you're not going to get coronavirus when you go to give birth. The challenge is that there's a whole lot of preventative strategies that have been put in place in order to prevent an outbreak of coronavirus at the hospital you're at. So, and I think instead of running from the hospital, if that was the original plan, women should contact their hospital and find out what that hospital's doing. The other thing is it can change throughout the day. Women are saying, oh, I've been getting different information. My friend's giving birth at the same hospital. She got given different information. Chances are every day that you ring, you'll get different information, because the reality is that everyone in the whole world is chasing their tail and wondering what to do. People making changes by the hour, making recommendations by the hour. I've got a friend that works in hospital as a midwife, and she said, the advice that we're giving in the morning is different to the advice we're giving in the afternoon. And
see, that would not make me feel safe as a birthing person if that was where I was birthing, to be given different information all the time. I mean, as we know, which I was going to ask you to speak to a little bit, what actually needs to happen for birth to unfold hormonally and for us to drop out of here and back into here, into our instincts, to be able to birth our babies. You know, it's conflicting information, not being able to just settle into planning. I can see how disruptive that would be.
It's incredibly disruptive and also unavoidable. If you're planning on giving birth in hospital, it's disruptive, it's not ideal, it's not respectful of women's needs, but it's reality. So I think we need to move from like, this is so not right that things are changing from 1 minute to the next. It's not right. It's not fair. But what can women do with that? And the reality is the midwives aren't making up the rules. Even the managers of the hospitals aren't making up the rules. They're coming from a person that sends a message or, you know, sends an email or whatever saying, right, this is the directive now. This is what we're doing. Masks for everybody. Only let one person in. These are the rules, right? Cut and dry. And so then you've got a team of staff who are working out, how do we keep ourselves safe? How do we keep the birthing women safe? How do we keep our families safe? Like, these carers are going back home to their families. So it's this huge, like, you know, the staff that you're with when you get to hospital, they're the end of the line. You know, the top of the line sends out a message and they are responsible for delivering what they're supposed to deliver. So it's really challenging for the staff and then for women. And the problem is that they're not ringing women every day going, hey, we're just letting you know that this has changed. Like, it would be a full-time job to ring all the women who are due that month. You know, my local hospital has 300 or 400 women a month that give birth there. Like, they're not sending on the messages. So women are just walking in confronted by what the rules are that day, I imagine. So yeah, I think women at least need to understand what's happening in their hospital in some capacity, even if they heard from them that week. You know, it's better than nothing. Like, better than not knowing. I have put some advice on my website, transformativebirthwork.com, for women that they can really institute right now within that situation. So anyway, they can go there and have a look. But one of the suggestions is just stay home as long as you possibly can in labor and walk in, push out your baby and go home. And then you can support your postnatal journey with a doula, a postnatal doula, or a private midwife who do postnatal visits, because there's a heap more midwives who do antenatal and postnatal care but don't do birth care. So you could potentially access a private midwife that way, or a lactation consultant. And so have as much care at home as you possibly can and just be in hospital for what you think you need to be there for. One suggestion.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I had something I was going to say to you just then. Oh, yes. That's the thing as well. We tell women and birthing people to stay at home as long as you can. I mean, there's an element, everybody who births should be prepared to potentially free birth.
By accident, yeah.
But by accident, you know, it's not out of the realm of possibility. So practicing autonomy, self-responsibility, and educating ourselves should be happening anyway, whether we're in this shit fight or not. That's just a side note that I wanted to say.
I know, but yeah, it's so tricky, because the other thing is a lot of women hire doulas as part of that journey for themselves. That, right, I know I need to be more, like, they're aware they need to be more prepared, but maybe can't quite see the path on how they could do it themselves. And so you bring to you people who will be with you on that journey. So often what happens is we as birth workers, we we go with women on this journey while they are discovering their own power and their own autonomy and their own abilities. And when they come out the other side, they're actually so prepared for next time, because you've been with them on that journey. And so you may have had that same experience with your birth. Like, we did all this stuff together and you were kind of working out how to be prepared, and then you gave birth and you're like, oh my gosh, I could totally nail that next time. So you come out a lot more, with a feeling of a lot more capability at the end. And so I think it's a journey that women go on, that they're usually afforded time and they're able to pick and choose who will help guide them through. Some women have got great friends who'll do it. Some women hire midwives and doulas, mentors that will take them through on journeys. The challenge here is that things have changed so quickly, is that the destination was no longer the same. We have no expectation. Like, there's so much uncertainty of what women are going to meet when they get to birth. And what happens is birth in itself is uncertain. And so women put in place all these certainties that they can rely on to be there in the time of uncertainty. So they will plan music, the location, their care providers, they'll prepare their partner for what's going to happen. They'll make all these plans, what they're going to wear, what the room will look like, all these things. And so now all of a sudden, all of that more concrete stuff that they could have control over is gone. So they're in a massive zone of uncertainty. So any woman who is not used to in life adapting and managing these kinds of situations is really going to feel it. There are some people who would just go with change, like, fine, that's how it is now, this is what we're going to do, and off they go. So my concern is for the families who would generally find it hard to shift and move in these kinds of circumstances.
But something that stands out for me is how quickly laws have been changed, rights have been removed, and so there has to be the other side of that, which is the potential for positive change. And so what is something, do you believe, that could come out of this that would be beneficial to birthing people and babies?
I think, well, after all this is finished, there's going to be a lot of positive change in society. Already, people are connecting with their communities in a way that they never have. They're buying locally, starting to realize that they can't trust and rely on big mainstream stores even to provide them with what they need. So there's already a shaking of the societal structure that we've been led to trust and believe in. So I think that's going to happen for birth too. But now the doors open for a paradigm shift where we're no longer necessarily going to see hospital as the safe and appropriate place, because they're saying, this is a place where sick people are. Like, if you're a labouring woman, it's become dangerous for you. It's become not ideal for you to be here because this is a place of sickness. And that's the worry, is that women are going to a place of sickness in order to have their babies. So I think that it's going to create a bit of a paradigm change. There's a conversation around home birth now that's a lot more pervasive throughout, just mainstream discourse. And so I think that it does open the door for home birth to be more accepted. And so that's positive, because home birth is a legitimate, evidence-based birth option. And all it takes is a little bit of governmental change and cutting of some red tape in order to have it an option in Australia, a wider available option. It's currently an option, but it's not easy to get to. So through any challenge, there's always going to be growth. And I think we'll get there in the end. The challenge is while we're in it, it's like a whirlwind, and women are just hoping it all goes well for them. So, yeah.
So what I have heard you say as some tangible things that birthing people can do during this time is to really go within, to be able to take responsibility for what they can take responsibility for in that space. So yes, the care and support that they will have organized may not be able to go ahead. So how can we think quickly to still utilize that care and support? So Zoom calls with a private midwife or a doula, your mum, whoever it may be. And if a partner is not equipped, do you think that it would be, in your opinion, better to have the partner or a doula there, or try to have the partner in the space but have the doula on FaceTime or Zoom or something like that? I mean, that's such a subjective question. And
it's so big. It's so big. I think women need to think about why they had hired or had the extra people in their space. What were they there for? And what can they no longer give them? So they could potentially give them their services remotely somehow, but there's still going to be something lacking. So think about, why did I hire that person, and what now can I get from them? And really their only option is to either birth in a place where they can have that person with them, which may mean home birth or free birth, but I don't think fear is an ideal decision making, like time, being in a fearful situation. I think that then women and families are almost forced to grow and expand their capabilities, and to just go, well, do you know what? Now I need to get the knowledge and skills to be my own doula, my own birth support, and fill in myself the gaps that I had that person there for. So it's a beautiful idea to have support people, and it's such a powerful part of birth. And women who have the right support are usually so satisfied with their birth experience. What's happened now is that that's been legislated away. And so instead of wallowing in the loss, there will be a place of grief, but staying there too long is not going to give women the skills they need to then still have a good birth in the circumstances. So they need to think about why they hired their midwife or doula, what they're no longer going to get from them, and how can they themselves get the skills that they were going to get from their other support people, and how can they prepare their partner. So I think it will mean really hard conversations with some partners who were also relying on having the extra person there and thinking, well, right, that I don't have to do that job anymore. I don't have to be prepared for that because that's what we're paying this person for, or that's why their friend is there. So again, a total mind shift, like, man, now I need to step up. Now I have to take responsibility because there's no other option. And so just diving into the right educational resources. There's a heap of great books about advocacy. I've thrown together what I'm calling the COVID mini run transformative birthwork course, which is 3 modules of my big transformative birthwork course, which has 8 modules. I've cut out the 3 pertinent sort of modules that focus on understanding the system, power strategies for how to navigate and manage birth within that, and also the 4th quadmester section. There's some bonus stuff. So it's those power strategies that women need to learn or have their partner learn so that they can adequately navigate the hospital system and advocate for themselves in birth. And I think it's not wise to swap out a partner for an ideal birth supporter for a few reasons. If your partner's already feeling disempowered enough that they don't feel like they can be an adequate support person for you in birth, pushing them further out of it is going to disempower them more. And when an already disempowered person gets more disempowered, it doesn't make them a better person for this new baby. So I think the journey there now is to empower partners in a way they didn't think was possible before. And if it's, I can't describe it really, but to see a partner defending their birthing, the birthing person, it's like this intense, amazing connection that they have. And all of a sudden they feel completely in their place and strong in themselves, and like some kind of primal, like, joy in protecting. And to deprive them of that, I think would actually also deprive them of for them, if they can see how powerful they are in birth with their partner, that makes them a powerful parent for their children. And so to not see your own kids be born is life-changing. For a doula to attend your birth and be your advocate is not life-changing for that doula or that private midwife. They're going to support you, and then they're going to carry on with the rest of their lives. The impact of not having the other father or mother of that baby there, I think will reverberate through that other partner's life in the long term. And so
we know that, birth imprints, and this is something that I talk about and explore a lot with my clients, like we are impacted by how we are born, both as babies and as parents. And so that imprint, and that's something that I am sitting with a lot lately, of women potentially and birthing people being potentially traumatized because they are resisting and not being with what is right now. What are the long-term implications of that? And that's something I'm thinking about a lot. And I know that a lot of the people that I'm working with are feeling that too. So to isolate or to separate the family during the birthing process, I definitely hear what you're saying. And I think, the non-birthing parent has an imprint from how their children are born as well. And that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. Obviously, if the partner is violent, or you 100% know that they cannot be there for you and you feel unsafe with that person, seek, if you can, somebody else. That's my opinion. And obviously everybody's situation is so different, but I hear absolutely what you're saying about the value of the non-birthing parent being in that space.
Yeah, and if we think hormonally, even, it's not just the woman who's flooded with oxytocin at the birth of the baby. Everyone in that room is feeling a level of oxytocin and therefore bonding and love for each other. And so to take that moment away from a family impacts their long-term bond. And so, I think women should really think hard about not having their partner in the birth space.
Actually, I learned that fathers, so the more hands-on the non-birthing parent is, the more their oxytocin raises, and it can actually match that of the parent who's birthed the baby.
Totally.
With how active they are and how hands-on they are.
Yeah. And yeah, and just imagine missing out on that. Like, what a different connection you'd have with your child, and a different instinct to protect and love and raise them, you know, from a place of love and like instinctual affection. It's a real challenge. I think that at this time, women should really consider making choices that keep their family together. And so even if they're giving birth in hospital and for whatever reason their partner can't be there, hang out at home as long as you possibly can and go to hospital, have the baby, and then come back home again. You know, stick together as much as you possibly can in this time. And yeah, that can only be beneficial.
Yeah.
What are you hearing from, you've heard some stories about what's happening to women in...
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on it already, that there is some different information getting fed to different people. And I think you've already spoken to that. Actually, the people within the system are getting different information, you know, day by day, hour by hour sometimes. So my advice to anybody that reaches out to me saying this is what I've heard is contact your care provider. Get a really clear answer for right now, because we're all, you know, I keep envisioning like cards thrown up in the air and they're still just spinning around in the ether. The cards haven't landed. Nobody knows where we are or where we're exactly going right now. And we have to be adaptable at this point. Birth should always, in my opinion, it is always transformative. It is always a rite of passage and always an initiation. Ideally, we should always be doing the internal work to be transformed as positively as we can. And I think that's just needs to be amplified right now. How can I adapt? Where am I going to feel the safest? What do I need to do in order to feel safe? If I can't change my scenario and that's something I want to do, how can I adapt to that scenario so that I can feel safe and I can be transformed in a beneficial way?
Yeah, that's right. And it may mean a change in some plans, and overcoming obstacles to that. Yeah, and I think a lot of women's situations are so different. Some women who were already kind of wanting to home birth but then decided to go to the hospital for various reasons may then flip back to home birth if there's a midwife available and if they can afford it and if they've got time. Yeah, I think women just need to look at their circumstance, find out what's happening for them, and don't pay attention to what's happening for everybody else. Like, it doesn't benefit a pregnant and birthing woman or an early, you know, new mother and family to be looking out and seeing what's happening for everybody else at this time. It's too frightening to look out into the world at the moment and see what's going on. And it doesn't benefit a woman to know what's happening in the US or the UK or New Zealand or even what's happening in the next state in Australia. They, at the time, this time in their lives, should focus on themselves and what is happening for them. So contact their provider, their hospital service or maternity care service, and focus on their own situation. How can you make it as best as you can for you? You know, yeah.
I also believe that as birth workers, right now, and I'm seeing so many more birth workers standing up and actually getting into activism and advocating really strongly. As I said before, we're seeing so many law changes and rule bends, this in a sort of oppressive way, that we should be seeing rule bends and changes in a freeing way for the future. And I feel like birthing women and people right now, as you said, need to go within, need to nest, cocoon, protect, do that work that they need to feel safe. And that as birth workers and people in the self-development world, it's my role and other people's workers' roles to be advocates, to extend support, to maybe make ourselves more available, more accessible. As we know, anytime there's something going on in our society, it is the most marginalized and the most vulnerable people who are impacted the most severely. So making ourselves more available to them, for me, feels really important. Are there any ways that you, like, what do you feel our responsibility as people who work with birthing people are right now?
I think take the time to look to the pregnant and birthing women and the needs of women postnatally, and discover the resources you have yourselves as a birth worker to give to them, and how you can offer them creatively, because it's obviously going to be different now with the way, how we can do things. Be super creative with what you can offer. Because what I've seen is a lot of birth workers putting their energy into activism, which is exactly what we need, but it's into activism at the expense of putting their energy into actual care of individual women. So, if you've got a client, you've got 3 or 4 clients at the moment who are in really tricky situations. Make your job to them to offer as much practical support as you possibly can. And then in your spare time, after you've done that, it's the time for advocacy. Because there's a lot of stuff going on, like I'm seeing on forums on Facebook, like people putting up stories of, my friend's sister said that her obstetrician said that she couldn't have this, this, and this. And then somebody else will put a, shocking story about their friend's sister. And then, doulas are putting up stories about their clients and their clients' partners. And there's all these stories. And so women are going on these forums and just filling up with the fear of what might happen to them based on the experiences of all these other women. So I think it's birth workers' responsibility now to not generate fear. Don't give sensational stories about what's happening to people. It doesn't benefit women to hear the scary things that are happening to other women. What birth workers need to focus on is, how can I serve the women who are already entrusting me as their carer, and direct your energy there. And so I think if we can imagine that, all the birth workers, doulas, supporters, throwing love and practical support at these women instead of sensational stories and the latest news update on Facebook forums, like how we could actually change things for women. There wouldn't be this fright and, I don't know, it's almost tipping into being a bit too sensational. And, Facebook and the news have always been sensational, but I don't think it's valuable to add fear to what's already a fearful situation for women. So I think our responsibility is to really consider if our words are contributing fear or adding hope and reassurance whenever we're putting something out there.
It's such a challenge, isn't it? Because people, especially people who have been in the fight and advocating for so many years, and now to see what's going on, it'd be hard to pull back, especially when we're seeing how easily laws and rules are changed right now. It's like, well, let's change the rules that are going to benefit birthing people and babies and families. And that's, so I totally hear what you're saying. I totally get why people are pushing for large change as well.
So it's really tricky. And there's a big element where, birth workers are responsible for exposing the shortfalls of the current system for women. That's always been the role of birth workers, is to get for women the right kind of care, that, you know, the respectful kind of care, the humanized care that women deserve. And so it is, it's enraging to birth workers to see now how women are being treated. But to allow the rage to dominate is, I don't think, going to be a benefit to women at this time. They need birth workers more now than ever before. So I guess my suggestion now is to be a birth worker and a carer for women. And then if you've got some time, do some raging advocacy in a way that's not going to add fear to women.
Because we're in it. We're literally in it. This is it.
And now it's time. Well, completely. And so now's the time that women need doulas and birth workers to love them and support them and help ease their fears. Give them strategies. Give them practical things they can do practical things for them. Just agree, we are in a really crappy situation. What can I do for you? I'm here to serve you. You've entrusted me to care for you. What do you need? How can I give it to you? Be a doula. Be a birth worker.
Extend that to the wider community as well.
Totally.
Everybody right now, and we're seeing that, as you mentioned before, you know, people are tapping into their community like never before, tapping into small local businesses, realizing, wow, this has really been lacking for me, and bringing that into the lives of pregnant women, your neighbors, you know, organize a meal train, send them some groceries, do, you know, whatever it is. I don't even know. Are meal trains allowed these days? I don't know.
There's so much that's allowed. There's so much that's allowed. You could make meals for women. You can send them groceries. My cleaner's still coming to my house. I mean, you could get them a cleaner, a laundry service. They could leave their dirty nappies on the doorstep and you could wash them. You know, you just don't touch people. That's the rule. Stay 2 meters away and don't touch them and clean your hands. Outside of that, do their grocery shopping for them, find them toilet paper, you know, whatever it is that they might need that will keep that family together and reduce the impact that they're going to feel from these changes. So while I think it's amazing, and we need people that are constantly pushing for systematic change, my concern is that everybody's interested in systematic change at the moment and the focus is off the women. They're like, we need change for women, change the hospital system, this isn't fair, rah, rah, rah. But then the women are standing there going, so what are we supposed to do? Like, you know, there's not going to be a sudden change to just allow women to bring their doulas and bring what they need in birth, because women largely in hospitals haven't had the benefit of being properly cared for in a way that really satisfies their needs in labour and birth ever in the industrialised world. So to suddenly expect that society is going to respect women's needs in birth, I think we might need to let go of for a little bit and just go, right, we're in this crazy situation, let's just look after each other for a bit. And it's so tricky though, because in birth work, we're constantly fighting political battles and providing care. And so I think now we just have to balance it in a way.
Right now, hey.
Completely. Women's needs are amplified. Political needs are like advocacy needs are amplified. Everything is amplified. So we only have certain resources within us and around us to provide for that. So my suggestion to birth workers is throw your internal, external, whatever resources you have, throw it into loving the women that you're caring for.
I just wanted to get you to, or ask you if you would throw some stats out regarding home birth and safety of home birth compared to hospital birth for low-risk women.
Yeah, right. So a lot of the research is for low-risk women, obviously, because it's really hard to collect information about women with risk factors, because the number of women who choose home birth with risk factors is a lot smaller. It was the topic of my PhD, but in terms of safety, we don't have a lot of that information. What we do know about women who choose home birth with risk factors is that from the research, the statistics suggest that women, regardless of their risk factors, are always physically, emotionally, and socially better off having given birth at home. For women with additional risk factors, the outcomes for their babies aren't as good as babies that are born in hospital with those similar risk factors. Mm-hmm. That's very, it's not very strong evidence, but that's what we've got is that's what we can glean from what we've got. For women who are low risk and don't have complicating factors in their pregnancies, and that their babies are healthy and well, and they're just healthy women, which is the majority of women, the evidence shows that even in Australia and internationally, the international research has mimicked the same, is that women are as safe, if not safer, at home as are their babies. There was one study that showed a slightly higher risk for women who are having their first baby at home. Their transfer rates to hospital are higher, but even if they transfer in, their chances of a normal vaginal birth and a well healthy baby are well into the 90%. Like, just by planning a home birth, you reduce chances of so much intervention and extra risk being added into the birth space. And that's largely about a woman's preparation and who she has with her. So all the research on home birth is there. It's been there for a long time. I think we just need to stop researching the safety of home birth, because we already have that information. Like, it's there. It's, midwifery care for women has been researched to the eyeballs. It's cheaper. There's better outcomes. Women are more satisfied. There's been even research done on midwifery care for women in hospitals with risk factors. So these women who would normally be cared for by only obstetricians and who are thought to be too high risk to be cared for by midwives, when they give those women their own midwife in hospital to care for them, continuity of care, they found that midwives can create the same outcomes as an obstetric care, but at like half the price, and the women's satisfaction is way more. It's called the Mango Trial. Actually, on my YouTube, I've done a video on it. It's called the Mango Trial. And so what we know is that midwives are good for all women, and some women need obstetric care, but it's not a big percentage. The World Health Organization says that 80 to 90% of women should technically, what we know about birth, be able to give birth without complication 80 or 90% of the time. And so that's the place of obstetricians, in that place where there's complications, but not at the expense of a midwife. No women should be deprived of the opportunity to have a midwife unless they don't want one. Totally fine. But what we know about midwives is that when women and midwives work together, the outcomes are amazing. The satisfaction is amazing. Home birth for low risk women, we already know that's completely safe from the research. What we also know is that places like private hospitals with obstetricians have worse outcomes than public hospitals with midwives. So, there's all these messages, oh yeah, you're getting the best care by going to a private hospital with your chosen obstetrician who could cut your baby out in a minute's notice, and so everyone's safe. That's not what the research is showing. It's showing that there's cesarean section rates, sometimes 60 or 70% of a obstetrician's clients are having cesareans. The babies aren't doing so well. So I don't think there should be no more research about the safety of home birth. It's done. No. It's just like, all right, now how do we get this care, this type of care? And women want it. Like, when you talk to women about what they want their own midwife in a place that they choose. Like, come on, it's not that hard. Other countries have done it. New Zealand's done it. The UK has done it. Netherlands. There's models that exist that serve the needs of women. They all have their problems, I imagine. But I can speak to here in Australia, less than, there's 1 or 2% of women who are having home births. And that's not evidence-based. because technically low risk women with no complicating factors, so let's say that's 80% of women, could potentially safely access that level of care, and and that would be evidence-based. So
it's just so amazing, actually, considering the amount of research that's been done, how little that information actually is known. I'm constantly having people asking me, oh, is it actually safe? Is it safe to birth my baby at home? And yeah.
Well, we've been told by society that it's not. Like there's a really governing medical paradigm that is benefiting from women being scared of birth. So that's what we've been, society's been led to believe, that it's dangerous. And so then all of a sudden, when you do it outside of hospital, like, whoa, wait, hospital, like birth is dangerous and hospital's there to keep you safe. And you're like, no, not from the evidence. Is actually women are already safe giving birth. Often the danger is the hospital. So, we could poo-poo.
I feel like that's a whole
thing.
A whole other hour and a half that we would need to really go in.
And I feel terrible for kind of being a bit down on hospitals, but because the staff within it are just working their butts off to do their absolute best for women. I just think that the structure around birth is not beneficial. And then you've got all these amazing people working in it, just trying to buffer women from the disadvantages of...
I don't think you should feel bad for the hospital, Mel.
Thanks. Anyway.
I mean, there's no denying there's so many amazing people that work within that system, but the system is actually working as it was designed. We have a tendency to say the system's broken, but this is how it's set up. It's industrialized birth. So it's important to remember that as well. But that doesn't mean we stop fighting for change and speaking out and empowering birthing people to demand more. So I am currently offering really, really reduced hourly rates if people want mentoring sessions and they're approaching birth. So if that applies to anyone who's listening, I'm not a medical professional, but I'm here for emotional and therapeutic support, and also really supporting the spiritual element of the pregnancy and birth journey. So
you will they contact you on Instagram at Ripsnorter, or is
contact through my website, The Stoned Chrysalis, or Instagram, but email is always better. And I'm also offering emotional birth support within the birth space. So I'm still going out, and that's considered an essential service. I believe.
Care. If you're going to care for someone, that's considered an essential service.
Yes. So I am still able to be within the birth space if you want me to be your one birth support person. So I have reduced all of my rates for pregnant people at this time. Amazing.
So you've got that, and that's something practical that women could access straight away because it's online, and it's also super practical support and considered care. So you're allowed to go. I guess my offering is the mini run, transformative birthwork mini run course. And obviously women are more than welcome to go right ahead and do the full transformative birthwork course. Particularly, I think if they need to get their partner ready, send them through it. That it gives super practical tips.
If anyone's trying to free birth, there are so many resources out there. And I am also available to sort of point you in the direction of more extensive things. And Mel's course, Transformative Birth Work, it's so comprehensive. It's there, and they've got lifetime.
It's a membership system, so they have it for the year, but new content is added almost weekly. So it's this revolving supply of information, and it's just getting better. Actually, last week I interviewed Hannah Dahlen, and today I've been processing that content. So that's going in super soon. But there's Rachel Reed. Yeah, Rachel Reed's in there, and Sarah Buckley and Jessie Johnson Cash and myself, and soon Hannah Dahlen have all contributed content to Transforming Birthweight. There's over 90 lessons in there now. And so it's super comprehensive, and it's only going to get bigger. And so there'll just be more and more information in there that people can just devour. So yeah, and at the website, there's a few little discounts hidden within the sneak peek and also in the mini run, so you can get discounts on the full course. But yeah, certainly I just think women need to think practically what they could do themselves.
Yeah.
Rather than,
and we're all going to get through it.
Yes.
We're going to get through it.
Yeah.
And there is huge change brewing, and so much potential for shifts in consciousness right now. I really fully believe that.
Amazing.
So it's, terrifying in part, but also exciting. And we just need to come together so much right now.
Totally. And what do they say? Necessity is the... Necessity. That was going to be grand. Necessity is the mother of all invention, or something like that. Like,
edit that out, Mel.
Oh man, no, it was going to be so good.